Hello, you adorably fabulous Algebra 1 students of mine. I hope you're well. Um, it's another Friday. That's when I'm recording. Well, I'm not recording this on a Friday, actually, but you're getting this on a Friday. It's dropping into Google Classroom on a Friday, so happy Friday. Maybe it's a Tuesday when you watch it. I don't know, but happy whatever day you're having. Here's a little warm-up for you. Why don't you pause this video and simplify this expression? Go. Alrighty. Here is a little expression. It's not an equation because it doesn't have an equal sign. Equal signs make equations. But we do want to simplify it. We want to do something with it in order to make it a little bit more simple. This is a technique that we're going to be using when it comes to solving equations, and we talked a little bit about that the last time I made a video with combining like terms. But when we look at this little expression, we notice that we can't combine any like terms. The order of operations tells us that we've got to take care of what's inside those parentheses first, but those two terms, the 2y and the 6, are not like terms, and so we can't combine them. But we have to get rid of those parentheses anyway, and so luckily there is a -3 sitting right next to those parentheses. Notice there's no plus sign or minus sign or anything in between the -3 and the parentheses. That means that we can use the distributive property. When we use the distributive property, we're going to multiply that -3 onto both terms in the parentheses, and that gets rid of the parentheses. It's just another way of dealing with the order of operations. And that will simplify our expression. So here we go. In order to simplify, we're going to multiply this -3 times this 2y. And really, it's just a matter of multiplying those coefficients. -3 times 2 is -6, and then that y comes along. There's nothing to do with it. You just bring it down. Always remember that you have to multiply on the next term as well. And it's helpful to think of this term and the symbol that's in front of it. Because now we can say, well, what is -3 times -6? And that'll give us the right symbol that comes next. Well, a negative times a negative is positive, and so we know we have the right symbol. And then 3 times 6 is 18, and we are done. How do I know we're done? Because there's no equal sign. I can't subtract 18 from anything. There's no both sides. I also don't have like terms, and I don't have parentheses, and so that is done. And yeah, it looks a little bit weird, but truly, that's as simple as it gets. I mean, as simplified as it gets. That's what I meant to say. All right, so we are going to be using the distributive property a little bit today to solve equations. But right now, it is a good time. It says God time. That's funny. A good time to update your notebook. That's where you want to be writing some questions, writing a summary, getting your new note page ready. I tell you, you guys, you are not going to regret keeping a notebook. A notebook is usually the difference between doing great with math and doing not so great with math. Trust me, you will never regret the time that you took to keep a good notebook. If you have not started a notebook in this class yet, you could start right now. Just start writing things down, because then when you go to the assignments, you can look stuff up. And the very act of writing this math down helps you remember it better. It's a way to help memorize and understand, too, the math that you're doing. Trust me, it's worth the time. All right, you pause this video, work on your notebook, and when you're ready, come on back and we'll do some more math. All right, here's your essential question today. How can you solve equations using the distributive property? And the topic is solving equations with distributive property. So we're going to be taking the idea of the distributive property to simplify and combining that with what we know about solving equations, much like we did when the last time I made a video when we were doing that with combining like terms. Make sure this topic gets into the table of contents of your notebook, and let's go. So the last time we talked, we added a step above our steps for solving equations. We added a simplify step because before we solve equations, we want to make sure that they're in the simplest possible terms. This makes things a little easier when you go to solve an equation. So what we added was this line, simplify, and then the way that you simplify so far is by combining like terms on the same side. That's a really important piece. Then you can go about creating clever cancellations and doing the same thing to both sides. Those are our actual problem-solving steps. So let's create these sides. And we want to simplify. And to do that, you're going to want to take each side of that equation separately. When I look on the right side, all I see is a 24. There's nothing to do. You can't simplify over there. But on the left side, I see like terms. I see a 2x, and I see a 3x. Those can be combined. There's a 4 there too, but there's nobody to pair it with, and so we won't. You're just going to simplify the things that you can simplify. 2x's plus 3x's is 5x's. And then we haven't done anything with the 4, so we bring it down, and that equals that 24 that we haven't done anything with either. And now we have simplified. We have taken care of our simplification step. The next thing to do is to do some solving, and we want to create a clever cancellation. That is where we want to start looking at both sides. We're going to look at the side that has the variable and get rid of the term that does not have the variable. So I'm talking about this 4. The easiest next step would be to subtract 4 to create that clever cancellation. And then we have to do the same thing to both sides. So I'm going to subtract 4 over here as well. These cancel. I have 5x left on this side, and that's going to equal 24 minus 4, which is 20. And since I haven't got that x completely by itself, I have to repeat this create clever cancellation step. You kind of circle around the create clever cancellations and do the same thing both sides step over and over and over again until you finally get x by itself, or the variable, whatever it is, by itself. Now this expression says 5x equals 20, and what that translates to is 5 times x equals 20. If we want to create a cancellation, we have to do the opposite. The opposite of multiplication is division, and so we're going to divide by 5. Make sure you do the same thing to both sides. These 5's cancel, and you have x equals 20 divided by 5, or 4. And now that x is by itself, you're completely done. We did all of the steps. So that's a quick recap of where we've been. We're not going to make it a whole lot more difficult, but we are going to remember that simplification isn't just about combining like terms. Sometimes it's about the distributive property. So sometimes when you get into solving an equation, you'll notice that there's parentheses. And inside those parentheses, you can't do anything because you don't have like terms. And so what you're going to do is distribute and then solve. So let's take a look at our sides. The 60 on the right can't do anything with it, but on the left, we can simplify that. We can simplify because we can distribute this 2 onto the x, and we can distribute it onto the 10. 2 times x can be written as 2x, and then 2 times positive 10 is 20. And now that equals the 60 that we didn't do anything with, and we have simplified. Now we go to our solving steps. We're going to start on the side that has the variable, get rid of the term that doesn't, and so we're going to get rid of that 20. Well, since we're adding 20, we'll do the opposite and subtract 20. We're going to make sure we do the same thing to both sides. These cancel. You have 2x left on this side, and that equals 60 minus 20, which is 40. All right, we're almost there. I bet you already know what we're going to do next. But since this says 2 times x equals 40, we're going to do the opposite, which is division, and divide by the 2. That's going to create our cancellation. And then remember, we have to do the same thing to both sides. The 2's cancel, and we have x equals 40 divided by 2, which is 20. And that's how you do it. So sometimes simplification is going to involve the distributive property. But then everything else after that is the same. Create clever cancellations, do the same thing to both sides. So our steps for solving equations pretty much just got a new step. We added into that simplify part. So when we are thinking about simplifying before going into solving, we're going to consider whether we're going to combine like terms on the same side, which we've been doing, or distribute to clear parentheses, which is what we just talked about. Then you'll go into creating clever cancellations and doing the same thing to both sides. These steps get a little bit more every time we talk, but they're never going to be as complicated as not knowing them. These are the steps that are going to be repeated over and over and over again, and the more you work with them, the more used to them you will get. And you'll see that understanding these steps can solve pretty much any algebra problem that I could possibly give you. All right, so here's our steps. Let's take a look at this equation and let's solve it. So we're going to take a look at our simplify step first. The first part is combine like terms on the same side. So let's create those sides. Can we combine like terms on any side? Well, the 4 is kind of, self-explanatory, nothing to do there. And then I can't combine any terms on the left side because there aren't any like terms. And so I can't do this step. And that's okay. Sometimes you won't be able to use a simplification step. But the next one says to distribute to clear parentheses. Well, we can certainly do that because we have a -4 stuck right next to those parentheses. So we can use that -4 and multiply it by the m, and then multiply it by that +3. So -4 times m is -4m, and then -4 times +3. Well, a negative times a positive is negative, and then 4 times 3 is 12, so we have that, and that's going to equal 4, because we haven't done anything with the 4 yet. So we were able to distribute to simplify, and we are now done with the simplification step. And now we're going to repeat, create clever cancellations, and do the same thing to both sides over and over again until the m is by itself. So when you want to create that first clever cancellation, you're going to look at the side of the equation that has the variable, but get rid of the term that does not have the variable first. So we have a -12. I suggest adding 12 to create that cancellation. Make sure you do the same thing to both sides. Those cancel. You have -4m left over here, and that's going to equal 4 plus 12, which is 16. And now we're going to have to create another clever cancellation because the m is not by itself. We have -4 times m, so we'll divide by -4. Make sure you divide by -4 because you want to get rid of the negative as well, and make sure you do the same thing to both sides. These -4's cancel, and you have m equals 16 divided by -4. Now when you have a positive divided by a negative, you'll end up with a negative number. And then 16 divided by 4 is 4, and so our answer is -4. And now we're done with these steps. So there you have it. You'll simplify first, and then solve using clever cancellations and the same thing to both sides. Let's try another one. So take a peek at this one. We're going to think about simplifying first. That's the first thing to think about. So let's create our sides. Can we combine like terms? Nope. Turns out we can't. There are no like terms, so we can't combine anything. So it looks like, though, that we can distribute because we have parentheses and we have a number sitting right next to the parentheses. And so we can distribute that -3, and we'll say that -3 times 2y, and then a -3 times a -6. So let's take care of that business. -3 times +2 is -6, and then there's your y. And then -3 times -6 is +18, and that's going to equal 36. Okay, we're done with simplifying. We were able to distribute And now it's time to solve this equation. We're going to create a clever cancellation by starting with that positive 18. We're going to start on the side that has the variable and get rid of the term that doesn't. We're going to subtract 18 from both sides. So these 18s cancel, and you have negative 6y left over here equals 36 minus 18, which is 18. All right, and now we have negative 6 times y, and so we will create a clever cancellation by dividing by negative 6. Make sure you do the same thing to both sides. These negative 6's cancel, and we have y equals a positive divided by a negative, so negative, and 18 divided by 6 is 3. And there you go. We have solved this equation, and we know we have because we got that variable by itself. All right. Let's do one more. Why not? They're fun. Once you get the idea, they actually are kind of fun because it's really just the same thing over and over again. You just have to think about what you have and follow the steps. So are we going to combine like terms? I hope you said no. There are no like terms to combine, and so we can't do that. Believe me, there's going to be a video very soon where we'll have to again, but we're kind of concentrating on distribution this time. There's a 5, and there's parentheses right next to it. Looks like we can distribute. So we'll multiply 5 times 2x and get 10x, and then 5 times 2, which is 10, and that's going to equal 100 because we haven't done anything to the right side. Done with distribution, done with simplification. We're going to create a clever cancellation by concentrating on the side that has the variable, but getting rid of the term that doesn't, and so we're going to subtract 10 from both sides. Creating a clever cancellation, doing the same thing to both sides. There's your cancellation. We have 10x equals 100 minus 10, which is 90. And then we have 10 times x, so we will divide by 10. And the same thing to both sides. 10's cancel. X equals 90 divided by 10, which is 9. Done. It's these same steps over and over again, guys. It's really just the same thing over and over again. Math problems look really different because you have different numbers every time, and positives and negatives, and there are those things to consider. But honestly, if you'll concentrate on just understanding the steps, you will be able to apply those steps every time, and you'll be able to solve pretty much any algebra problem. Alrighty, that's all I have for you. We solved equations using the distributive property. Your practice is on quizzes. I'm starting to really like that website, so you're going to be getting a lot of assignments on quizzes. If you really hate it, let me know because I'll try to find something else, but it's working pretty good for me right now. The essential question, how can you solve equations using the distributive property, should be answerable by you right now. So can you answer that question? Think about it in your head. If you can, great. If not, how about you let me know so that I can help you. All right, you guys, I hope you have a wonderful day, whatever it is you're doing, and I will see you next time. Bye.